Let me start by sharing a secret about myself. For many years, people have been asking me, why don't you color your hair? And I never told them the secret of my wise looking consultant looks is L'Oreal Smoky Silver Hair Color. My name is Akhilesh. I've been a consultant all my life. The biggest asset for my credibility has always been my hair. Nobody ever challenged my experience even when I had none. Today I'm going to share with you an idea, something which has been on my mind for several years, something which I've been reflecting, analyzing and refining based on my work, the work of other experts, and also by extensive debate with experts. I want to talk to you about the idea about diversity in leadership. This is an idea which I want to illustrate through my own life journey. I have been incredibly lucky to be working with some of the finest and most accomplished bosses in KPMG in last 22 years. It all started with a very happy accident, and when this gentleman, Sanjay Dhawan, who hired me out of campus, I've worked with many bosses, but I must say Sanjay is truly the best. For one, he could tolerate me for 6 years, because after Sanjay, I'll go on to have 6 more bosses, one every year for next 6 years. I attribute a large part of my success to Sanjay because he told me what it means to do client service, what it means to win work, what it means to be successful in life. And Sanjay and I had an incredible journey of working together. And what I realized is that as I was working more and more with Sanjay, I was becoming more and more comfortable in my job. The work was a lot more fun, and I must admit that the learning curve started to become less steep as both of us were quite predictable and I knew what to expect tomorrow. It was all okay till one fine day, Sanjay called me and he said that he's decided to leave the firm and he was relocating with his family. I didn't know what to say. It was a very sad moment for me. I had never worked with anybody before and I couldn't imagine the thought of working with somebody who I don't know well. But as things happen, Sanjay moved on and very quickly I got a new boss. And my new boss was hardly someone like Sanjay. My new boss, for one, was an American. 2, he was never married. And 3, he has never ever worked in India. And that's not all. He was different because he thought that we needed to change. And not change simple things and not change small things. He thought we needed to change everything. And that was a very tough moment for me. How do you deal with somebody who you've never worked with and has come up with ideas which are contrarily different? I found it extremely difficult to manage and learn and work with this new boss. But as we humans are, we adapt, and I realized that I need to learn to work with the new reality. And in the long run, it actually turned out to be very well. Initial few weeks were tough, and thereafter, I realized that working with this new boss was equally interesting. And with this person, I could learn something which I had never learned before because he came in from a different environment. So what this new boss taught me is to work on large projects. This new boss taught me how to make money and not small money, make a lot of big money. And that was my boss for another year. And thereafter, I go on to have 5 more bosses for 5 more years. And for each of the boss, I must say the learning curve was tough to start with, but then as you started to adapt, you became better. And if I were to say, what are the new things I've learned? I've had the ability to make more money, as I told you. I have learned to deal with extreme professionalism in difficult situations. I have learned to win through relationships. I have learned the power of dreaming big. And last but not the least, my 6th boss, which I had in 2008 or 9, I learned how to manage complex and difficult stakeholders. The point I'm making here is that all my 7 bosses, which I'm talking to you about, were diverse. For one, they were all from different nationalities. Some were Indian, Australian, American, Canadian, Indian American. And I'm not trying to be racist, but they all also came from different religion, different belief system. While they all shared the shared ecosystem of KPMG, but they all were very different in their approaches of dealing with life. If age is a factor, I must tell you the difference in my age and the person who was managing me was anywhere between 12 to 27 years. So I truly experienced diversity to the fullest extent by working with different bosses. And as you can see, my learning curve every time I worked with a different boss was tough to start with, and it became much more steep. Had I not worked with so many diverse bosses, I don't think I would have been that successful, and certainly I wouldn't have been invited to open this TEDx event today. The point I'm trying to make here is diversity makes you really good, and having a diverse leader is a wonderful idea. And when you have diverse leader, you can get a better career path. Clearly, diversity makes all of us learn new things and adapt to newer challenges which we have never done before. Diversity is really great and makes a great tool for performance development and people development. But that's not my big idea. My big idea is that we are at an inflection point of how we look at diversity, and especially diversity in leadership. I want to talk to you about that. Most of the time when we look at diversity, we think of common attributes like race, religion, ethnicity, beliefs, physical abilities, etc., etc. And these are the attributes of diversity as we are known to see today. But as we see a very, very different, very diverse, and a completely unknown actor is entering our workplace. This new actor is so diverse that it is hardly like us. Yes, I'm talking about this new actor, which is machine, artificial intelligence, AI as we call it, or algorithms. So this new age workplace will have an absolutely diverse workforce, wherein we are already seeing many of the jobs which we do today are being replaced or taken over by machines. And that's a common phenomenon. But the real phenomena I'm talking about is machine not only doing the jobs which we do, but really getting machines to manage humans. Now that's something which we are starting to see, and there are several examples where machines assigns work, reviews work, manages performance, optimizes work. There are several examples of machines being in our workplace, not as a worker, but machines being the boss of a human worker. Several examples like a call center agent. If you look at it today, you need a call center human person to talk to another human, but who's managing that call center agent? Yes, there might be a human somewhere, but really who assigns work? The work gets assigned to a call center agent by an algorithm. The work gets reviewed by a call center agent by an algorithm. The work gets evaluated and optimized all based on how you behave, how you operate. So we are living in a world where call center agents are actually not being fully managed by human bosses, but they are being managed by machine bosses. There are several other examples of machine bosses. For example, patient healthcare. Yes, you need a nurse, and there's a nurse who's taking care of you, but who's assigning work to nurse? Who's making sure that the nurse performance is effectively evaluated? So there's a task which is about how do you review somebody's work, how do you assign somebody's work, how do you look at their work being different, and how do you optimize their work? So we are entering an era where machines will be managing humans. While we might think that this may not be happening today, but there are several examples, as I talked about, beyond call centers and patient works. There are examples of deliveries. Who manages delivery men? Who manages coffee baristas? These are all the examples where we are seeing algorithm managers. So the managers are no longer human, and that's a phenomena which is continuing to happen. I want to talk about how great this world would be when we have a machine boss. So if you've had a favorite playing boss, or if you had a biased teacher, I want to see your hand. So clearly, when we have machines, you won't have a favorite student, you won't have a favorite worker, just because that person I like. So there's a good chance, this is my personal belief, that the machines are likely to be less biased than we as humans get to. The second big thing which I think I would love to work for a machine boss is about the temperament. Many a times we see our bosses demonstrate a particular type of a mood based on what happens not in the workplace, but what happens outside the workplace, many a times at home. Would you like your boss to come to work after having a big fight with her or his spouse? I certainly wouldn't like to have my boss come having fought with her spouse on the day of my annual performance review. So clearly, the machine bosses can be not only less biased, but they have possibly no mood swings. The third point I want to talk about, where we would love to have machines as bosses, is about the degree of personalization. It has been told that the more closer you are to your people, you are likely to make them more productive. Let me illustrate this through a very small story. This is the story of my friend John. John is a factory worker in the US, and he is highly hardworking and ambitious. And John is doing great in his life when his boss says that you got to learn new skills. And John goes to an FMS of US, learns new skills, and he is now well prepared to take on his new job, and his new job is the head of manufacturing nationally. When John comes to work, he's learned many things from FMS-like institute, but one thing which he's taken on very seriously is when you got to manage humans, try and build personal contact. Make sure that you know them well. So John has a great idea that every time he visits a factory or a new plant or something, he goes and asks the manager or his direct report saying, how are your family members doing? How do you feel about this, etc., etc. And this is a bright, shiny morning in Texas when John is visiting one of their biggest manufacturing plants, and he's greeted by the factory manager, Greg. And John, in his usual style, all he's learned from B school, goes and says, Greg, how is your wife doing? Greg replies with an absolute straight face saying, John, she's still dead. John isn't alone in our world. There are several Johns which tend to try to, with no malintention, with all good intentions, like to be personal, like to build that connect, like to know their workers really, really well. But we all suffer from the limitation of our memory. We can't remember everybody's birthday. So my big point is that the machine boss will certainly be a lot more personalized. The machine boss will like to understand what I do and what my life is. Google knows more about you than possibly your spouse does. The machine bosses are likely to be more and more personalized. If nothing else, they will certainly not schedule a late evening call when it is your wedding anniversary. So those are some of these examples. The last but not the least, I do believe that we all lived with the philosophy of in God we trust, but I think we are also adding another member to that. In machines too, we trust these days. You will recall many times you have listened to a Google Maps more than your own instinct or somebody sitting next to you. Another confession. This is one of the significant reasons of the fight which I have with my wife when I'm driving with her and I choose not to listen to her. So we tend to trust machines because the machine has all the data to analyze which a human doesn't. Believe that as we are having these new bosses come into our workplace, it is equally important for us to look at the machines from another side too. Life is not all that great. There are also big challenges. There are also some things which we need to look at it. One of the example which I started with was the call center agent. Now, one thing which machine does great is that machine knows what my capabilities are and how I work. But what machine also does is what I call extreme surveillance. As much as you may love your job, I don't think people like somebody to be sitting on their shoulder at all time. Would you like to do a job when somebody is watching you 24/7? And that's the kind of a phenomena which we are experiencing with today's machines. A call center agent is never left alone. She or he is always being watched. There are many examples where people feel frustrated because I have almost no freedom and I'm being watched every single time. Let me give you a very different example and a very different world of how machines are managing our workforce beyond the boundaries of the classical organization mode, which we're going to see in the future. And I'm talking about an ecosystem called Uber. Every time I get into an Uber, I ask the driver saying, who do you work for? And many times the drivers tell me, I work for myself. The reason I drive Uber is because I don't want a boss. Many drivers leave their jobs and drive Uber because that gives them freedom and they believe that they work for themselves and no one else. But for those Uber drivers who've been in the system for a long time and are a little bit more intelligent, they actually figure it out that they are not working for themselves. They are actually working for one big boss called Uber app. The Uber app is the biggest boss of hundreds and thousands of drivers. The Uber app actually tells the driver where to go, who to pick up, when to pick up, which route to take, how to drive, which toll to pay, how to collect money and how much to collect. And the Uber driver almost has no ability to make personal decisions. And that is another aspect where the machines are extremely in a surveillance mode and they're watching an Uber driver all the time. So that's one of the biggest factors which have been identified, that the machines create a high sense of extreme surveillance and people don't like it. So that's one big disadvantage of machines having extreme surveillance. The second point I want to talk about is of what we call information asymmetry. And the people who work with machines, again, let me take the example of an Uber driver. An Uber driver says that everything which I do, machine knows. Machine knows me extremely well. But do I really know the machine? No. I don't know how machine calculates the price, how the surge pricing is done, which area I get pushed on. And there's a big dissatisfaction amongst the people who are managed by machine, saying that machine knows me really well, but I don't know machine at all. Imagine if you were to work for a boss and the boss knows everything about you and you know nothing about that boss. That will be an example of an extreme lack of transparency. And that is second big reason the machines may not be trusted as good a job. So all the reasons which I told you that machines can be a great job, these two are the big disadvantages. And the third, very important, is that we as human workers need personal touch. As much as I may love my job being managed by whoever, I need a person. I need a shoulder to cry on. I need somebody to talk to me more empathetically rather than just giving me instructions. So there are several reasons because of which we think the machines will be a great boss, but also it is very important for us to have a different ways of looking at machines. So what? What does it all mean? In my view, the proliferation of machines in our workplace will undoubtedly increase. And this trend of machines being our bosses or the algorithms being our bosses is completely inevitable and irreversible. There's a need for us to prepare our workforce to live with this new and diverse leader in our workforce. We also need to develop approaches of finding motivation and meaning in what we do when we are being managed by highly objective and highly productive machines. So that's really a big thing. Equally important is for us to have machines evolve. Machines need to evolve and learn to work with humans with a high degree of empathy. I have no doubt in my mind that the machines will get there. But here is my call to action to all those AI developers. You need to work on machines which go beyond surveillance. You need to work on machines which actually are sensitive to human emotions and are effectively able to demonstrate empathy when they're dealing with humans. I'm extremely optimistic, and my optimism says that this new world of machines and human ecosystem is here to stay and is hopefully going to make our world much better place. My extreme optimism also suggests that this might be the most wonderful way for us to solve the problem of declining productivity, and this might also be a way for us to find meaning in what we do. I want to end my talk by sharing a quote from Tom Friedman, and he said that pessimists are generally right and optimists are usually wrong, but it's the optimists who make the big change happen. Thank you.